For whatever it's worth, this is the thing that seems to be sticking to him, driving a wedge between him and some on his base. And yeah, like you said, it is incumbent on us to drive that wedge further. So they can't do things like election rigging out loud. Now we talked about the Indiana side of this with the gerrymandering, but this week the Texas Democrats, who had previously fled their state to deny the Republican state legislature their quorum to keep them from passing horribly gendered maps, well, this week they folded. Texas Democrats returned on Monday, clearing the way for Republicans to quickly pass this legislation, which they did later in the week. Now, before that happened, there was more drama, of course, as Republicans ordered the Democrats who had fled the state to be chaperoned by Texas law enforcement to make sure they would come back to vote on this thing. One of those Democrats, State Representative Nicole Collier, refused to sign this permission slip and was confined to the state house floor for a 3-day sit in. Um, I found this particularly gross. I don't think it got enough play in the media. They talked about Collier and the way she was stuck there and her bravery staging the sit-in, but I don't think they like tied the way that they were like basically forcing a black woman to get a white man's permission to leave the plantation. I, I, I mean, did anybody else see this thing this way? I see some nods. Yeah. Uh, so also, after everybody got back in, the state house passed these gerrymandered maps. The state senate passed their maps on Saturday after thwarting an attempted filibuster. This thing will go to Governor Greg Abbott's desk, and he will sign them. Um, Thoughts from Leslie on the Texas portion of this gerrymandering?
I just think it's so sad, right? They know that they can't win on the issues. And so they want to stay in power by rigging the election every way they can. They've been doing this for years. And it is just such a tragedy of white male supremacy, that they could work for the people, but they just are really working for themselves. And from what Heather Cox Richardson says, Republicans don't like gerrymandering. We really should have independently drawn maps. That's fair. While I was campaigning, I would say, remember like Deflate Gate or something with the Patriots when the NFL team, they kept winning and then they had all this incentive to keep winning. And people don't like that, right? They want it to be basically fair. And so the people are going to have to, rise up more and say enough is enough. And but I don't know. We're going to be really stuck because all the election rigging is getting worse and worse. And I don't know, but it is a tragedy. I mean, Texas itself is a real tragedy, and they don't care what the people want. They don't care what the people think.
Well, we mentioned those 11 states where, Republicans have used extreme gerrymandering to cement themselves in power, like Indiana, and Texas is one, and they're, gerrymandering themselves even further now at Trump's discretion. Now, you said, folks, they want fair maps, and I generally think everybody does. Some states, their voters actually demanded that their states use fair maps, and one of those was California, which has used an independent redistricting commission to draw their last couple sets. But this week, Governor Gavin Newsom is asking California voters to temporarily waive the independent district redistricting commission so California Democrats can gerrymander their own state maps to counter what Texas is doing. Riley, I want to ask you about California and Newsom. So, I mean, first of all, if you're a California voter, are you going to approve this?
Well, I think Newsom made a great point of they voted as a state whether to call this a special redistricting session. So he asked his people, is this what you want to do? It wasn't just a decision unilaterally made by the leadership. So I think, he said they called a special session to explicitly get more seats. There was no question about why they were doing it. And if you want to play by what we talked about earlier with Indiana saying, it needs to represent who we are as a nation. Okay, well, if Texas is going to gerrymander the map, so let's go play ball. I think that there's a dangerous conversation happening around like people criticizing Newsom because of some of the stances he's taken on things in the past, but we don't have time for purity politics anymore. Not that we ever did, but we especially don't now. He's taking a stand. He's mocking Trump. He's getting under their. He's playing the way that they've been playing. We can't play nice anymore. They've been playing dirty for so long, and that's how we got in this situation. So if you want to, if they want to get dirty, let's go play in the mud. Let's do some mud wrestling. Like I'm all for it personally.
Yeah, and aside from the gerrymandering stuff and Newsom using his power in California to counter that. He's also been engaging in a lot of social media shenanigans, trolling Trump. That's a whole separate conversation. Maybe that's our one big thing next week on how to deal with a bully. But yeah, I mean, Jesse, it's so California's having to go to the people to undo something they already did. This is a problem that I think Democrats may run into in other states where if they try to counter some of the Republican shenanigans, they may find themselves hamstrung because in Democratic states, like we've actually tried to do things like enact fair districts and use like nonpartisan redistricting commissions. Is there any way out of this becoming a race to the bottom?
Yeah, so I think that you're pointing out a really important thing, which is that the whole system has always been rigged in the favor of rural districts, right? Like we still have an electoral college, we have a bicameral legislature with the Senate. Like these things don't exist. Like the concept that individual regions would be able to draw their own maps without having to consult the voters, that doesn't exist in any other developed country on earth. This is just a huge, hundreds of years old anachronism. And I think that, I think it makes sense for California to be doing what it's doing. I don't think we could just, again, take the moral high ground and ignore like realpolitik. And I think we need to fight back and resist fascism as much as possible. And I'm glad that we're taking it to the voters to ask for their permission to do that. And I think that we need something a lot more drastic and a lot bolder of a vision if we want to fight back against Trump. Because you look at Project 2025, and then, there is a document, Project 2029, which is supposed to be the Democratic fight back. And it's like gets us back to taking away some of Project 2025, but still has ratcheted us to the right a little bit. I just double checked myself, and they do have abolished the Electoral College. Yeah, should be a no-brainer, but it doesn't have like DC statehood on there. It doesn't have, just a number of like pretty moderate common sense reforms that only don't exist because of politicians. Like you can ask 9 out of 10 Americans, like, well, of course, why would anyone not have the right to have a senator just because of arbitrary lines on the map? And so I think we're still weaving, in this case, Democrats are still playing small ball while like there's open fascism going on. And we're like, well, technically the parliamentarian says that we can only do X or Y. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
We just need to be proposing like much more radical changes. And then maybe we negotiate down. I'm not saying we stop doing parliamentary politics, but we have to fight fire with fire, not by getting into the dirt necessarily and playing the exact same tit for tat redistrict, map, but more of just no, we need to take bureaucrats' power to control our lives away by making an independent redistricting mandate at every level of government. No government should be able to take away your right to vote. That is also 2029, but they don't spell it out in the way that they should, which is the government should not be able to say you're an illegal, therefore now you can't vote. The government should not be able to say you're in jail, therefore now you cannot vote. Like, why should the government be able to restrict your right to vote for any reason? If there are that many criminals or illegals or dangerous people that they are a substantial voting bloc, then why would they not get some representation? So I think we need to be a lot more straightforward and bombastic in what we push for. And then again, maybe we negotiate down from there. But glad that they're fighting back, want them to fight back even more.
if the Trump era has shown us nothing, it's that you can go big. You can do the thing. I don't like the thing that these guys are doing, but they're going for it. And it should tell Democrats that we can go for it and make the reforms that we really need in this country. I do want to move on to our another portion of this story, though, because beyond the gerrymandering, Trump this week also said he wants to stop states from using vote by mail and that he wants to ban certain voting machines. So he announced this on Monday on his True Social site that he plans to lead a movement to get rid of mail in ballots and voting machines ahead of next year's midterms. Part of his plan includes signing an executive order that bars states from using mail ballots and potentially some voting machines. uh, Democrats have been more likely to use mail in ballots compared to Republicans since 2020, and that gap has only gotten wider. Um, Now, R Street Institute director Matt Gerner, and this is a Republican think tank, said it would be a huge undertaking and is highly. I think it's highly unlikely that he could end vote by mail or the use of very particular voting machines in time for 2026 now. So, listen, I'm going to be the first one here, Leslie, to say that he actually has a point about certain types of voting machines because there are some jurisdictions, particularly places like Georgia, where they have touchscreen voting machines that have no paper trail. So
Yeah, yeah,
I'll
there is definitely
you
a
see the point
problem
there?
with the yeah, there's a problem with the voting machines, and we don't know if there was hacking for definite, sure in 2024, but even in my county, Porter County, the vote counting machine didn't seem to be working initially. And there's definitely malfeasance, and people who are motivated to screw with the election are motivated to screw with the election. But Trump just is a chaos agent. He's abusive. It's like he's trying to hit us all, so that we cry and scream. We know a lot of this is distraction from, the Epstein files and everything else that's going on. And he just wants to, throw all the papers in the air so that, like an octopus, he's spewing out the ink so he can go that way and get away. We definitely have a problem with voting and the counting of the votes in this country. I don't know the correct way to fix it all, but yeah, he's just definitely trying to do this just to mess with people's heads. I mean, that's what he's good at. That's what he's been doing his whole life. He's incredibly manipulative. And as long as people are manipulated by what he does, he's going to continue to do it. That's the tragedy.
Yeah, I do think like we use here in Indiana, we need hand marked paper ballots everywhere. You could still use machines to count them, which you have to, but we shouldn't be using machines to actually mark our votes for us. It is very problematic. Now, Riley, so regarding the voting by mail, there are some states like I want to say Oregon, Washington, and maybe Colorado that do all of their voting by mail quite successfully with no fraud and better participation than Republican states, I may add. I don't know about you, but I'd like to see mail-in voting everywhere. What do you think?
I think it's a good avenue to pursue. My question more is he says that he wants to get rid of certain types of voting machines and he wants to get rid of mail in voting. And given what we've seen coming out of Rockland County, that they have shown that there has likely been manipulation in the tabulation of the machines because of the p value being small. There's a whole report about it. But if he's getting rid of wants to get rid of the voting machines that do have that paper trail and getting rid of mail in voting, that raises the question, are you only wanting to retain the voting machines that don't have the paper trail and cannot be proven that they've been manipulated? That's my bigger concern of why. Why do you want to do that? Not because you're
Y-
concerned about false voting, but I think there's something deeper there.
Yeah, and there was tampering. There were cases. We saw it in Georgia. We saw it in Michigan with folks trying to get into the back end of these voting machines. Just this week, Trump threatened harsh measures against Colorado if they didn't free Tina Peters from prison, and she is a former Mesa County clerk who was sentenced to 8.5 years in jail after tampering with county voting machines after the 2020 election. So this is still in the news.